extent by the Stetson Institute for Water and the Environment, and most recently by the Arthur Vining Davis Foundation through the Stetson Institute for Water and the Environment. So I want to give my thanks to those agencies that have given me a little bit of financial support to make these events happen, right? So one of the first things that animates my work with these maps is the Pristine Myth. And I'm going to just do a little bit of a theoretical discussion before I get into the nuts and bolts of the maps that we're going to talk about today, because I think it's important to address some, important aspects of cartography that go back all the way to imperial times, which include the times of William Bartram. And so the Pristine Myth is basically the idea that the Americas were an empty place, unpeopled, when Europeans came here. And most of the evidence that we've collected in the early 21st and the later part of the 20th century indicate that there were actually many, many people here. And so the project that has got me animated with the Bartram Trail Conference is sort of using this as an avenue to bring a greater awareness of the fact that the Americas were a much more complex place at the time of the Revolution and of colonialism. And I think Bartram provides an opportunity to do this, both in the things he describes, but also in the absences of the things he describes. And so the idea or the concept of the Pristine Myth was articulated most, I think, elegantly by Bill Denevan, a geographer, in 1992. So I introduced this as a way to sort of remind us that the place that Bartram was coming into had been peopled for thousands and thousands of years before we arrived, before Europeans arrived, and that there was a legacy in the landscape there. Bartram is one of the first to recognize this, obviously. I think the fact that his frontispiece is the Long Warrior says a lot about his orientation to the native community in the landscape here. So I just was very fascinated by that. And I was wondering, well, how can we bring these things together? And as a geographer, I am obviously very motivated and influenced by maps and mapping. And so I, like many people, thought, how fun would it be to, map Bartram and just get all of his sites on a map so that people can, get a better view for its flow. And as I started to get involved in the project, I, like many people, realized that this is a very complex thing to do, because Bartram is very circumspect about landscape in travels. And he's indeed circumspect about it in many contexts. And so because Bartram was so vague about geography and pretty fast and loose with his time when he was describing that in travels, I found that project to be incredibly challenging. And so it turned into a longer term project. And I've been poking around with this for a while. And then, in the reading about it, I came across some interesting texts, which some of you may want to go and check out. And I think Buddy Paulette, Ed Cashin, and Daniel Schaefer all, provide some really interesting insights in this regard. And Buddy Paulette in particular was really fascinating in his discussion of how Bartram and many worked through the good graces of the traders who were moving through the colonial landscape. So much of the United States wasn't under European control at that time. It was still peopled by Native Americans, and traders were moving through those Native American landscapes, and they were involved in their own commercial enterprise. And in the process, they were trying to hide their knowledge about the interior lands from the crown, because as the crown got in, it made it more difficult for the traders to maintain a superior position in terms of negotiating prices and the types of things they would want for furs. So Bartram, in having this knowledge while traveling with traders, would be better served to, respect their desires for privacy about, specific geographic knowledges and how to get there. So there's a lot of, interesting theory about why Bartram portrayed the landscape in the way he did, why he, focused at times on more natural representations of places that probably were peopled, why he didn't give a lot of specifics on geography, things like that. So I encourage people to go and check out these books. So Travels as a document is clearly multidimensional. It has a lot of things going on there. And when you read it, you see that it's talking about the natural world. You see that there's a lot of discussion of European settlers and people making fine progress in establishing cattling operations and agricultural operations and all these types of things. But he also spends a lot of time talking about Native Americans. And if we look at the 32 chapters that are in Travels, 26 of these have accounts of Native Americans. And part 4 is a complete cultural anthropology of Native American societies. So he has a very strong focus on these societies in his work. And I think it's important to, for us to think about how we can make these links with Bartram's memory to the complex landscape that's he's engaging with there. And I think the comments from the speaker who is talking about her work with the Gullah-Ogeechee cultural heritage area, really highlighted how we need to bring the Native American voice into this enterprise if we're talking about a heritage area, because Bartram himself is describing really what is an extremely complex and messy human landscape. You have colonials in a milieu in which some are thinking about revolution and breaking away from the empire at that time. And then you have colonials who are loyal to the British Crown at that time. You have Native Americans who are in alliance with the colonials at that time, and some who are not in alliance with colonials at that time. We have Native Americans who are in alliances with each other and at times at war with each other. And Bartram touches on all of these things. And so I think it provides a really unique opportunity for us to look at the complexity, the messiness, the sort of contingency of the American experience at that time, right? And so when we think about the way we use Bartram in a mapping project such as this, what we're doing is we're getting involved in place making, right? We often think of history as defining and describing objective things that happened in time, but history is actually a performance in the present about how we want to represent the past, right? And that is actually a very intentional thing. And it's something that has a lot to do with equity. And that's where I come to this project from. So I'm really concerned about the types of places that we make as we memorialize Travels. And how do we use Bartram's experience to present history in a way that embraces the entire American experience? And the way this has been done a lot is through historical markers. And we talk about historical markers in the BTC a great deal. They're part of the heritage corridor experience and the things we want to do there. And so we do want to definitely consider historical markers. And there are, more than one of these things around. They are all over the place. And I guess by last count yesterday, we have 88. When I first got involved in looking at Bartram and historical markers, there were about 53 in the southeastern United States. And this is the first map of Bartram I made with one of my students over 10 years ago. And we've been carrying on with this project for quite a while now, right? And even at the time that Bartram was involved in this, there was kind of an unknown aspect of what was going on with Native Americans. So this 1770 map by John Purcell is sort of one of the most famous maps of this part of the United States. And so I share it as just kind of like a cartographic footnote for you here. So if you're interested in maps, you might try and study the John Purcell map a little bit. So how I came to this project today, so changing gears a little bit, I need to say thank you again to the people in Putnam County. And I do need to engage in the rather unpleasant task of historical revision at this point. Putnam County's Bartram Trail Conference, I believe it was in 2014, was where I first met Dean, Ken, Sam, and several of the others. And I went there with great intention because I was already working on making my own map. And as I started making my map and collecting my data, I got online, and within a few months of me starting my project, Putnam's site came up. And my first response was, damn it, they beat me to the punch, right? But then I started looking around and I realized how well done and how beautiful it was. And I immediately changed to, a lot of the groundwork has been done for the thing that was kind of a dream that I wanted to do. I need to connect with these people and see if they're interested in building this project out a little more. So I went to the Bartram Trail Conference, I met them, and I said, hey, I'm down in Volusia County, and I'm interested in what you've been doing there and maybe expanding this. So this is where I need to do a little unpleasant work and revise history. It's come to my attention that people have not been really representing who has done the labor in Volusia County with regard to this. When you've seen this map presented before at the Bartram Trail Conference, I get the impression that somebody else took credit for the work. This map is mine. This is my map. It would not have happened without the connections that I made in Putnam County on that day. It would not have happened had I not taken this to the River of Lakes Heritage Corridor and presented this idea. I'm the principal architect of this, and anybody who says otherwise is incorrect. The inspiration of this comes entirely from Putnam County, and this would have not happened at all without the work of Sam and Dean on this, and also Ken Mahaffey and his amazing work going to Great Britain and collecting the imagery. So there's a lot of work that happened in Putnam County that absolutely was necessary for this to happen. The work that happened in Volusia County was organized by me and operationalized by Sailforth Productions, which also did the work with Putnam County. So I didn't make this map. It was done by a village of people, but I was certainly the principal architect of bringing Bartram project to Volusia County and connecting it what was going on in Putnam County. So I just want to make that clear because I feel like that's not the story that has been out there. And I want to make sure that that's clear. So getting back into the pleasant stuff, the work I've been doing ever since then. Since this point, I traveled for a while and had a bit of drama in my life. And so I stepped away from Bartram after making this paper map. Oh, and this paper map is available at kiosks as you enter Florida. It's based on the same principles as the stuff done in Putnam. But what I've been working on since then has kind of been a result of the pandemic. So when I came back to Stetson, it was very quickly kind of put into upheaval by the COVID panic, and teaching GIS became a very different thing. So I had to learn new skills at that point. And the way I've been approaching mapping Bartram fundamentally changed at that point. And so I started to move into digital cartography a great bit. And that led to thinking about how we can portray Bartram online in more dynamic ways, rather than just doing this on paper maps or things that people can print out, rather than just web pages. And I thought perhaps we can make a map a bit like the Google Maps that Brad Sanders had been pioneering, but do this in a slightly more cartographically sophisticated way, in a way that gave the maker a little more agency in what they were portraying. And the first foray into this was through what we call a story map. And we can see this here in the links are available. I can put them in the chat, and I'm sure Sam and others can make them available to you. So these are all available online. And so the idea is that we could start bringing imagery and quotes from Bartram's work to life in a very dynamic type of way here. And to do so in a way that would be platform independent. So as we're looking at this story map here on a desktop computer screen, what I'd like to share is that you could also pull this up on a cell phone, and the format would change so it would be more appealing to see on a cell phone. And in these types of formats, you can do things like put in hyperlinks to take people directly to sites of interest that you would like them to be able to interact with as a result of this. So this story map is a starting place for maybe getting Bartram's stories built out. And we don't have to just do this in Florida. We could build this out on a larger scale. And we could also build even more detailed stories in any of the particular sites. So if we wanted to spend a lot of time talking about Bartram's experiences near Spalding's Upper and Lower Store and the alligator battle, we could certainly build something like that out quite a bit more. Right? So this was the initial foray into the Bartram Trail Conference. This map has been updated through time, and there was a much simpler map in here to begin with. And this is the platform through which I think we're building a bit more of a sophisticated interface. And all of this basically has been made possible by working with ArcGIS Pro Esri products, which are considered the industry standard for mapping GIS and cartography the world around. So I've been working with this for the data editing aspects using ArcGIS Pro, which gives us a little bit more functionality than Google Maps. So one of the first things you'll notice I wanted to change was the background for the map. So cartographically, to give it a feel that reflected the colonial area a bit better. And so this base map is a product through Esri, which is known as Modern Antique, and it specifically references the 18th century as the inspiration. And one of the things I like about this map is that it really pulls out recreational areas, wildlife areas very nicely. And it kind of downplays. You'll notice how cities don't look like huge urban areas. They're downplayed, but Osceola National Forest, the wildlife management areas tend to pop out a bit more in a map like this. And I think that's something thematically that fits with the Bartram Trail Conference a bit more.
We're not seeing the map on our.
Oh, you're not seeing it? Well, that's terrible. Let me share screen differently here.
Thank you. By the way, I have Tony's map. We have copies of that, as well as the Bartram Trail of Putnam County. Here we go. Yay.
So let me back up and show you the story map very quickly. So the story map is here. Can you see William Bartram and the William Bartram in the River of Lakes Heritage Corridor?
Yes.
Perfect. And so I'm scrolling around here and you know, pulling this imagery out and getting it into like these nice little divine things, that's a lot of work. That's the type of thing that, you know, I did for these images, but when I think about the work that was done by Sailforth Production for the maps they made for Putnam and Volusia, I know how much work that Stephanie and everybody there put into this. So the story map allows us to kind of scroll through and maybe go through a little adventure, right? That as Bartram's traveling and seeing some of the things he sees and some of the images that are associated with those areas. So the story map is one way to engage with this. And embedded in the story map is what we call a map app. And this map app is something that's much easier for a user to interact with, right? And as I said, I author most of this stuff in ArcGIS Pro, which is that Esri platform here. And so that just gives you a glimpse of the work environment that this happens in. So when we look at the final product of this map, which is, I think, where we're heading, I think this is what I would like to see replace the Google map on the Bartram Trail Conference website down the road, or the type of, you know, kind of approach that perhaps the National Park Service takes, or the GIS doyen takes if and when the Bartram Trail Conference becomes a national heritage area, I think perhaps this is the type of field that maybe we look for. And as I said, the base map in the background emphasizes wilderness, aspects that a lot of ecotourists might want to experience. And notice how Jacksonville and Orlando kind of fade back. The urban areas are there, but they don't dominate. So I think this makes for a much better look for a map that deals with Bartram, right? And there's some different levels of functionality that are built in here as well. So you can, if you have a particular area that you're interested in mind, you can choose these bookmarks and go directly to those so you can zoom in and see these things. I think you'll notice that as we zoom out, the points cluster together so that the map doesn't get cluttered. And as you move in, the points start to resolve and break into smaller and single entities, which makes it a little easier to see everything. And even here, you've got like 2 things clustered that would have been difficult to pull out, 3 things clustered. But as you pull out, they kind of group together, and it makes the map look neater, no matter what scale you're looking at. And I think that that's an important thing to do cartographically. It makes the experience much nicer for the viewer. We have a little notation thing here. And if you're in an app, you hit this central point, it'll show you exactly where you're at. If you're in a particular location and perhaps you're hiking around or paddling or something like that, maybe you do want to get a better view of the landscape, you can toggle between the base map and imagery down here so that you have a flip-flop. And rather than providing a lot of base map options, I think this provides the 2 things that 90% of the users of a map like this are going to need. So we have the option of flipping back and forth between imagery. So if you're hiking around and you want to look at where the forest is versus the grasslands, this will allow you to do that. One of the things that I'm most excited about, though, here is the search options we have. Of course, we've got a legend that shows us the different types of attractions we have here, but this allows us to do things in terms of searching, which I think are quite fascinating. So I type Indian into the search term here and notice that it gives me several types of results. And only down at the bottom do we start seeing things that resemble the addresses of places in Florida. In a typical, Google Maps search, when you type in the word Indian, it's going to give you places with the word Indian in its name. But this, on the other hand, gives you Bartram sites, which are these red sites here. So if we have a quote, for example, that has, well, let's try a different one of these sites here. If we go to Mount Royal site and we click on the search term there, we can scroll over and it will give us the text of what Bartram wrote about this location, right? And so it's searching inside this text for these terms, so we can search for a location if we like. In fact, we could even search for, let's close this and try instead. And I haven't tried this yet. I just tried to update this. And I hit 99, and this gave me page 99, which is the Mount Royal site. And if we look at, well, the page number search is maybe not working perfectly right here yet. Oh yeah, page 99 of travels here. But we've got several different fields that we can use within the search in the Bartram sites to see what we can find. So we can find plantations or Pucky the flower hunter and zoom in on the site and find, what is it, that is relating to this. So this searchability function within the website, I think, is one of the more exciting things that we can do here with maps like this, so that people can, look at the book and say, where is this in the book? And then we can get them kind of closer, right? Even though there is some geographic uncertainty. So I know that's my time. So I want to stop it there. And again, thank you for the opportunity to finally come and share the work I've been doing with mapping with the Bartram Trail Conference.